All right, we're going to call our workshop to order. We're going to declare a quorum of 6 members present. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for being here. And first item, C, hearing of citizens. And we have none. That brings us to item D. Number 1, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to setting a date for Team of 8 training. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak. All right, everybody, take your calendars out. Let's see if we can get close to landing this plane a little bit. So I originally had 6th, 8th, and 20th out, and even the week of the 13th. This is of June. I know the 6th, 7th, and the week of the 13th does not work for a number of people. So, and the 20th, here, let me go here. Initially, I was wanting to try to get this done in June, but it's okay if we don't. So it may be better for us just to explore July, is the feeling I'm kind of getting with just everyone's schedule for, hello, Mr. Ben. He dared me to do it. He dared me to do it. So we might just, if you guys, I'll ask about June 20th, but and that's the day before our regular June meeting. So that's back-to-back nights, and we can go July. I can do, you're making faces.
I should have done more homework. I don't know if we're going to be back on the 20th yet.
Okay.
I'm chaperoning a trip.
That's quite all right.
And
So how about we explore a few dates in July as a group?
Sure.
We're going to start somewhere, right?
Yep.
Okay, so our and I don't know, maybe July would be a little bit better. The regular meeting in July is the 19th.
Okay.
So, and I always just tend to Tuesday, Thursday. You know, it doesn't. July the 12th, 14th.
No, is that a no already?
Okay.
Can I interject with July? If more than likely I will have Air Force training and be gone,
Okay.
which literally leaves the week of July 11th only for me. More than likely until August.
Oh, so July's out.
He said the week of July 11th, right?
You're available.
You leave July 11th?
No, I'm available that week.
Oh,
I would leave.
that week.
Yes, I would probably leave on the 17th and be gone for 4 weeks if it gets approved.
The week of July 4th?
That's going to be the best one for me.
The 7th?
Anytime the 4th, week of the 4th.
Maybe.
How's July the 7th?
Probably not. Like I said, I think I can
Oh,
only
I'm
do
sorry.
that week.
Oh,
The 11th.
I think that week, so 12, 14th, other days you mentioned.
out.
but Somebody was out on 12.
think we might have to table this.
We might have to just hold
Have to
off
table this.
again.
How, if, I hate to table it, but if I can try to find out over the
If
course
you'll
of the
be
next
there.
month,
Okay.
but more than likely I won't be around.
Okay. So this is what I think I'll do is.
Is June 20th even on the books, an option for everybody if we check schedules? Is June 20th favorable? Favorable?
You're just
favorable?
not sure.
You're,
Yeah,
okay.
I've got to figure out some other stuff.
Okay.
So 20th is a possibility still, it sounds like.
Okay. You want to just let me, when do you think, Geraldine, you'll?
I can talk to that sponsor tomorrow. Well, they're leaving tomorrow again. I'll try to catch them.
Email me after spring
Yeah.
break. This is not, the only catch is Team of 8, so we all have to be
Right.
there, right? So, and we can, it also, what we're going to capture in this is some self-reflection time, self-evaluation time for the board. And we'll get the Team of 8. The way I'd originally envisioned it is the beginning of it, I would capture kind of comprehensive update on our strategic plan. But I can do that as a part of the workshop on the 20th. I can capture that outside of that. I was just going to package it all together. That's why I was forcing the June date or initially. So, but that's a workaround. I can handle that. So let's do this. Let's pencil June 20th.
I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Did he just say he
He
could do the
did.
20th?
I thought he did.
No. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. So no, we're not going to pencil June 20th.
Okay.
Did that go?
Darren, I'm sorry. If you leave, when will you be back?
I have multiple trips. One is in, I leave like the 16th, 17th of June, get back that late, the first week of July. That's why I said I only have that week, and then I have 4 weeks of training that I will more than likely be at.
When would you be back from training?
August, probably around the, I think the 12th or 13th.
Yeah.
And this is 3 hours, right, that we have to do?
3 hours. So then I will explore August. Okay. You said around the 11th or 12th you'd be back?
15th and after should be fine,
Okay.
just fine. Sorry,
It's all right.
I have like 3 jobs.
Okay, so I will work on some dates in August. I may even pick up a few in September. I'll get it in the transmittal probably after spring break. Might do just a little polling system as well to see if we can't find one that works for the collective group. So it's okay. We'll find our way on it. All right. There you go, Mr. Horak. That was item number 1.
Wonderful. Number 2, receive an update related to the 2021 bond projects. Mr. Martindale.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Horak. Board members, we have Mr. Oz, Mr. Hall joining us to give us an update, kind of lay out a timeline for upcoming projects associated with our 21 bond and the next several summers and different renovations, timelines associated with the different projects and items that were a part of those various propositions. So, Mr. Oz, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale, members of the board. Mr. Hall and I are going to tag team this. Is it on? It is on. Okay, I'm just making sure it's on. We're going to tag team this. I appreciate Mr. Hall being patient with me. It's the first one we've done together, and so we've had to exchange edits a lot, so I appreciate him being patient with me. But we're going to each do a few of these slides. I'm going to cover the first several, and then he'll take it over when it gets to project time. But just to kind of tell you what we're going to go over, we're going to just give you brief overview or a reminder of the bond program, the information that was there, the bond purchases that have been approved to date, because you've approved a lot, but there's been several that were under that threshold that came to you, so you may not be aware of them. Our project timeline, and then Mr. Hall's going to go over project details, specifically the ones that are coming up quickly, but mainly the major renovation projects. So just as a reminder, you all called the bond in July of 2021. That election was November 2nd, and 3 of 4 of the proposition passed for $78.125 million. You approved the sale of those through a competitive bid that we held on February 1st, and we were funded on February 24th for that whole $78.125 million. We did sell it all at once. So in January, we had band uniforms, the fire alarm upgrade at Rock Prairie, and student laptops that were district-wide. Those all came to you for approval, so we appreciate that. Those have all been, purchase orders have been issued on all of those. In February, there was band and orchestra instruments that impacted intermediate through high school. Buses. We had the band trailer upgrades for both of the high school band programs, a marching band tower that was purchased for A&M Consolidated High School, a fine arts enclosed trailer, and this will really assist all of those fine arts programs, intermediate and up. We had some technology purchases with regard to server backups and HVAC order with regard to the Barbara Bush Parenting Center. And I said several of those did not come here for approval, but they have our internal approval process in place. And then tonight, either later in this presentation or at the regular agenda, you'll be hearing about interactive display boards, auditorium lighting for both high schools, staff technology devices, running track resurfacing at A&M Consolidated Middle School, and Southwood Valley Phase 1. So just as a reminder, this is a project summary that tells you the campuses and kind of just a broad topic and how they're all affected. So we're very pleased that this program, this bond program, touches every single campus, if not in one category, in several categories. So if they haven't been impacted yet, they will shortly. So it's just in reference, this is on our website as well. We just refined it for the propositions that passed. So just for reference. And then I'll turn it over, let Mr. Hall take the project timeline.
Thank you, Mrs. Drozd. Yeah, we wanted to give you all kind of a big picture view of the project timeline of all of these projects within the bond package and kind of the scope and how they were going to unfold with regards to the calendar. A lot of questions about these. So we'll start off with the categories on the left, the campus renovations. This is kind of the big piece of the bond. It's about a little over $23 million worth of work on these 4 campuses listed off there. You can kind of see the green squares indicate the time of the year that we're going to be actually doing the construction. Of course, in between those green squares are just all kinds of design meetings and background preparation, but you can see for Consolidated High School, at least for the first 3 years of it there, those are going to be summer type projects. We have one agenda item tonight is for Southwood Valley Elementary Phase 1. You can see that's going to be Phase 1 in the summer of 22. Phase 2 will be the following summer. And you can kind of see the next 2 campuses, how they kind of fold out over the next couple of years. Pebble Creek would be next for that, and then Cypress Grove the year after that in 2024 for construction. So these are just kind of our rough out for how that all unfolds. It's amazing how fast 9 weeks will go by in the middle of the summer when you get this much work. So for general equipment, infrastructure, you can see the HVAC upgrade line. Basically, that's going to go the majority of the whole bond time frame. We're going to be replacing air conditioning equipment, boilers, that type of stuff, really on just about every campus, especially the older ones across the district. We'll be tackling up on some LED lighting on several campuses, and we're going to be doing that in the spring and summer of 23. Of course, as we do some of the renovations on the other campuses, we'll try to pick those up in conjunction with those projects as well. We're going to try to pick up cafeteria service line this summer of 22 over at AMC-MS, as well as track resurfacing project over there. We're going to actually try to knock that one out before the summer in the month of May.
John, quick question on
Yes,
the
sir.
middle school and the cafeteria. That'll be over 50, so we probably anticipate that coming to the board next month. Is that?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Going on with the project timeline here, we've got career and technology education. I've got a couple of pretty good projects in line for that. The biggest one is Phase 1 CTE Center that we've talked a lot about, like the Ag Sciences barn type facility. You can see that we got pretty good time frame there for some construction. That's a little bit of a guess right now until we kind of identify the exact scope of the project, but that feels like it's hitting in about the right space. We're going to pick up a couple of metal outdoor canopies for the 2 comprehensive high schools. Be touching base with a little more detail on that later on. And we're picking up some greenhouse repairs and culinary and miscellaneous upgrades to some classrooms the following summer in 23 as well. So for transportation and other type projects, we've got some buses that were recently purchased. We've got about 14 this round, and I think maybe 10 the next round. So we're going to be purchasing those, but then right under that is parking lot expansion. So as soon as Hector starts getting all these buses in, I better scramble around and give him something to park on. So that's what that's going to be, is some concrete work out at the transportation center. We've also got a couple of squares in there for district land. As y'all know, we're trying to obtain another piece of land. Always trying to keep an eye out for that to give us more flexibility in the future. And we also have a couple other little projects, playground surface improvements. We're going to be picking that up on some of our elementary campuses, as well as district natatorium. And you've got the 1 square for the first one. That's actually on consent later on tonight. The 1 square, that's for the natatorium boiler replacement. So we're just doing that one piece of it right now. And then we'll design the rest of the project. And the other 3 squares will be when we do the full architectural renovation. And finally, we got some stuff for safety and security. You've already passed a Rock Prairie Elementary fire alarm. We're also going to be working on security vestibule upgrades across all the campuses, primarily in the fiscal year 23. Mr. Hutchison's going to be helping us out with some camera upgrades across the school district as well. You see a lot of green squares. It's not that the work is so much, it's just the time, and it's going to be stretched out a lot there. And for miscellaneous technology and fine arts, we've got fine arts instruments. Y'all have already approved some of Mr. Eek's purchases for that. And you can kind of see how the rest of them kind of fold out there for technology devices. We're going to be picking up some auditorium lighting. I believe that's also tonight in the regular agenda. And some classroom interactive displays too. So Mr. Hutchison is getting out of the chute early and running fast on some of this stuff, which is great. So I'll hit us with just a few details on some of these projects. We're just going to kind of fly high and move fast on these. But the first big one we're going to be coming out with this summer is Southwood Valley Elementary. In fact, that's on the regular agenda a little bit later tonight. This is planned in 2 major phases over the next 2 summers. And we've been ongoing having meetings with VLK architects really since October of 21. We started it just a little bit early to get a jump start on it. We've had several really good meetings with Allie DeLuna and her staff. We've covered program requirements, spatial and adjacency requirements, what needs to be next to what. And we've gone through the color selection process as well. And finally, we got deep enough in the project that we pulled in Mr. Hutchison to kind of help us out with all sorts of technology issues. Quick breakdown on the phases for us that we'll be looking at a little bit later is phase 1, of course, is this summer. And primarily that's for the relocation of the principal's office suite over and connecting and creating a new lobby and the new security vestibule that'll be tied to it. We're going to be doing some relocation of some kindergarten classrooms and breakout rooms, as well as a new exterior elevation on the front of the building. I've got some photos and pictures I'll show you in just a minute on that. And then the phase 2 breakout will be basically the remainder of the work, and that'll be a little easier to accomplish. Famous last words, right? A little bit easier. It's going to be primarily refinishing carpets, floors, cabinets, that sort of thing. So we're not going to be doing nearly as much wall tearing out and replacing on the second round. We will be doing a little bit, though, for reworking the library area space to make it a little more efficient. So looking at the floor plan, the area kind of colored in with blue, that's our phase 1 area. And if you can, let's see if I can get the little pointer to, you can see what I'm pointing at there. There we go. That's kind of the main entry of the building right now as you're coming in. So really the principal's office suite is this big section in the front. That's going to be converted into lots of breakout rooms and multi-purpose uses over there. And along this whole wall right here, which is a series of kindergarten classrooms right now, we're converting that space into our new principal's suite area. And so that's going to be the bulk of the work over there as we tear out a bunch of walls, build a bunch of new ones, put sanitary sewer lines under the slab, that sort of thing. Here's a picture of the front from out in the parking lot. You can see at the top is our existing image right there, and you can see the old round reinforced concrete pipe windows that are in there right now, which don't work very well for office spaces. So what we're looking at doing is you'll see the picture at the bottom there. We're creating some more rectangular type windows up off the floor just a little bit that works a whole lot better for an office space.
So John, I'm pretty sure that years ago I took a nap in one of those one time when I was up there volunteering.
They're great for napping, not so great for
Right,
office space.
right.
But,
I don't know, I will be sad to see those go. They're also great places for kids to take pictures.
they've also been
It looks
quite the
good.
challenge for waterproofing.
That's what I've
just saying.
heard, yeah, that there's, I mean, if it's, that's a reasonable reason to do it.
Maybe we can put them up for sale when we pull them out.
Well, maybe we could
know
put
if I
an
like 'em
auction
that
or
way.
something.
Maybe. Been there a long time, 40 years, right?
So here's a couple of other images we have for you. If you first walk in the door, the picture at the top, that's our existing security vestibule. You'd walk in and you'd look over to the right, which is our reception area, which is isolated and separate from the principal's office area right now. If y'all have walked in and out of there, you know what I'm talking about. It's a little awkward. It's one of the things that we've been wanting to fix for a while. The photo or the image at the bottom is when you step into that same security vestibule, you'll be looking to the left now, and that's where the principal's office suite will be as you go in there. So this will be the first of our new security vestibules. So we've combed that over pretty tightly to make sure that's a nice tight security vestibule space for us. And if you step on through the security vestibule, you'll go into kind of the crossroads of the main hallway there, the front lobby. The photo at the top is existing, and even with that one, you can kind of see how the dark doors and the old fluorescent lights, it's just a little darker, older feeling in there. The image at the bottom should be an accurate reflection of, like, even with the LED lighting, you can kind of get a teaser for your color scheme in there. Little blues and yellows kind of worked into the game, but should be a really nice looking space. And finally, we want to show you a typical classroom as well. The one up at the top is an existing classroom. And if you go through on the virtual walk around, it's the same classroom, same angle on the image at the bottom. And so you can see a little bit how we're picking up some of the new cabinets and new painting and new ceiling grid and carpet, that sort of stuff. It'll kind of refresh the space all through there. Here's a picture of our color board selection. I think Allie has the actual one back there leaned up if y'all want to look at it after the show tonight. But you can kind of see the color palette is not too crazy. It's fairly neutral. Got a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow to kind of punch it up in a couple of spots. But it's going to look really nice. It's going to look a lot like Pecan Trail Intermediate. Pretty similar to that one, actually. So driving on to the other projects, our next big one, kind of on deck after this is A&M Consolidated High School, and by dollar and by volume, this is the biggest renovation project combination in the 21 bond package. It's about 11.9 million, in fact. We had our first big design meeting on March 1st, about a week ago, with Gwen Elder, Amy Drozd, Tiffany Parkerson. Had a pretty good little group around the table with us, and of course VLK was leading the charge with that. We reviewed our major concepts and programming needs for that school for the next few years, and tried to identify a scope that we could actually accomplish in the summer of '22, because we're running out of time to crank stuff out for these summer projects. The entire renovation will be broken up into at least 4 phases. So we'll be going from this summer, which we start a smaller one. We're going to be working on these all the way probably through the summer of '25. The focus primarily is going to be on interior finishes such as carpet, hard flooring, paint, restrooms, doors, cabinets, that sort of thing. Not only for the classrooms, but for the big public areas, big lobby areas, hallways, stuff like that. We will be picking up fine arts areas, including the auditorium. We'll be picking up the big choir room, the band room, the orchestra rooms. We'll be getting nice renovations in there as well. And then, of course, we're going to have to take a good hard look at some of our science labs for upgrades for not only safety, but a lot of our MEP stuff that always seems to be needing a little TLC. Phase 1, summer of 2022 coming up. Generally speaking, we're looking at about half of our existing restrooms in there that we feel like we can get in there pretty quickly, change out the flooring, put in new toilet partitions, new toilet fixtures, sinks, that sort of thing. We're also looking at picking up a storefront that will separate our gymnasium athletics area from our cafeteria. And really that's to keep people, when they're coming for ball games, from just being able to go out, and then just kind of wander through the cafeteria and on through the building. So kind of keep a little better crowd control that way. And also, we're going to be picking up some gym floor refinishes as well. Big picture wise, phase 2, which we'll be tackling up on the summer of 23, will be really the first round of the big flooring, paint, cabinets, doors, that kind of stuff. We're going to focus primarily on the classrooms and some of the fine arts areas. Try to get Gwen a freshened up principal's office suite in there as well. And really the full sequencing of exactly which areas we're going to do, we're still working on that, kind of fingering those apart, kind of which ones would be the most efficient for us. But as we follow up in the following 2 summers with phases 3 and 4, basically it'll be a continuation of the same. And we'll probably tackle, like one wing at a time for whole areas, but we'll see. We'll pick up little onesies and twosies off on the side as well for a lot of this stuff.
John, can I clarify one quick thing? When you say on the gym floor, is it new flooring or is it a refinish of the existing?
Refinishing of the existing flooring. And one of them we're going to take all the way down to raw wood and work it all the way. The old, I always called it the old Pep Rally gym. I don't know what the official name is, but we're going to take that one all the way down to raw wood, paint the stuff back on it and come all the way back with the finishes.
Okay.
But
Thanks.
So the next project after that one is going to be Pebble Creek Elementary School. And once again, it's pretty standard stuff. We're going to be refreshing interior items such as carpet, hard flooring, restrooms, kind of the standard stuff. One oddball thing over there that we're going to pick up is a couple of 5 or 6 years back when we built a new principal's suite over there. That left us an old existing principal's office suite kind of in the middle of the building over there. And Blair has been talking with me about, Blair Grande's been talking with me about that for a couple of years. And what we're going to do is convert that space into some more usable space for conference room and some other breakout spaces to help her overall efficiency in the building. We're going to probably start our design meetings early fall of 22 to get this one off and running, and currently planned for construction for the summer of 23 on that one. And then right behind that one is Cypress Grove Intermediate School. That one will be a little more standard on just the refreshing of the finishes in the classrooms and in the corridor spaces for all of the standard stuff. We'll more likely be starting our design meetings for that one in the early fall of 23 and looking at our construction during the summer of 24 for that one to just kind of space these out just a little bit. We do have some projects for career and technical education. Mr. Kevin Ross's world there. We've had lots of fun having conversations with him. He's a high energy guy. Really interesting to work through stuff with him. But first thing out of the chute for him is we're going to try to get those large metal covered canopies at our 2 big comprehensive high schools over there outside of our construction science, ag mechanics type areas, so we can have a good all-weather area so they can get out there and work on small construction projects or welding projects, that sort of thing, where they like to get outside and outside of the building just a little bit. We're also going to be doing some classroom upgrades for Consol High School Intro to Culinary Arts. Going to do that the summer of 23, and as well as working on our greenhouse upgrades for both of our comprehensive high schools that summer as well. We are, of course, planning a new CTE Center planned to start in late 22 as phase 1. This is going to be focusing on our agriculture areas and classrooms. And so basically kind of an ag barn with some nicer stuff inside of it is generally what we're looking at there. We did have our first design meeting last month. Mr. Martindale joined the crew for that one, as well as Kevin Ross, Tiffany Parkerson, Amy Drozd. Had a good discussion about our major program requirements and layout needs for animal holding pens and classrooms and all sorts of related items to that. And just as a reminder, this bond does not cover any kind of a phase 2. This is all going to be phase 1 only. If and when we do a phase 2, that'll be a subsequent bond package sometime in the future. Got a couple other miscellaneous projects that we wanted to just put on your radar for this coming summer. We've got an agenda item later tonight for the A&M Consolidated Middle School track resurfacing. As I recall, that's on consent. We're going to have A&M Consolidated Middle School cafeteria serving line, as Mr. Martindale mentioned earlier. That'll probably be coming to the school board in April. We do have the College Station Middle School natatorium boiler replacement this summer. That's also an agenda item on consent tonight. And also we have HVAC equipment replacement on several campuses. We'll be picking up a couple of them this summer, and they'll basically be continuing for the next couple of years for projects. So that'll be a kind of ongoing effort for quite a while. So that's just kind of a quick flyby for kind of unfolding the projects and a rough idea of when. We're going to be sticking fairly close to this, but we've got other factors out there in the world that may bully us around a little bit for lead times on materials and that sort of thing. But we're going to try to hold as close to this timeline and process as possible. And with that, I'd love to open up for any questions or comments you might have.
Just excited to see all the work done and appreciate all the work that went into this with the bond committee whenever they had that, and also our community for passing these bonds, because this is much needed work and it makes a huge difference in our schools. It really does. I think one time, wasn't it you, Kimberly, told a story about how some people had to come in and use a restroom at AMCMS for something during parking or something, and so you had an admin there, you were able to let them in, and they were like, how old is this school? And they were amazed at how well it was taken care of. And
Yeah, they thought it was a brand new school.
right,
Exactly.
right. So I love hearing stuff like that. And it sounds like this is what we're doing. We're just going to continue to do this. So thanks for your work and thanks to the community.
I would like to mention too, I forgot to mention it earlier, that with VLK Architects, we have Melissa Fleming and Krista Thomas. If y'all could raise your hands. They've been really leading the charge on all this design effort in the background, doing an absolutely great job for us. And Renee Ramirez, my sidekick in facilities over there, we do a lot of stuff here too. I want to thank them for showing up and doing all the hard work in the background for this as well.
And I just add, I personally feel the confidence that I know you guys will execute well on this, because you have been doing this for many years now for us, and we have very appreciated. We've had a good team and in our building group, so I have the confidence in it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that will bring us to item 3, consideration and discussion related to the 2022-2023 budget development process. Mr. Martindale, here we go.
Thank you, Mr. I kind of lost the words now. Thank you, Mr. Horak and board members. Ms. Strauss, our Chief Financial Officer, give us our very first of many to come previews of work for the 22-23 budget. Again, it's March, and so this will unfold over the course of the next several months. So don't get too excited with the first one because there'll be work that occurs through the course all the way up to June, probably leading into July even. So, Ms. Strauss?
Thank you. I told Mr. Hall he could stay up here and tag team this one with me, Timmy, but he declined. I don't know why. I'm hoping this one is as good as the last one. I'm not sure it'll be as pretty. Got a lot more numbers than he had, but I don't know why he declined. But first of all, what I want to go over tonight, again, a reminder, as Mr. Martindale said, this is our first one. But our budget goals and objectives, as well as our challenges, some historical data, because a lot of the things that we do, we based on historical trends. And as we all know, the last couple of years have not been normal, so we have to look back a little farther. We will look at the current year and some projections because that will become where we think we're going to end this year will become our baseline for next year. And then start looking at some preliminary revenue information for 22-23. So just as a reminder, most of these goals and objectives are the same ones we had last year, but we did add a few. So I'll go over them briefly, but we want to recruit and retain high-quality workforce to support instruction. So that is something that has not changed. And we want to support quality instruction in the way of staffing, supplies, equipment, and services. So we always want to look at our expenditures and make sure that it focuses in the right place. This is one that we added, and we want to utilize the data that's available to make budgetary recommendations that are in the best interest of our district. So as much as possible, we will be using data to drive those recommendations. Maintain a financially healthy fund balance. And then the last one is new, is to begin to reduce the use of ESSER funds in our support of the general fund. So that's been added this year to our goals and objectives. So our budget challenges have changed. Last year, if you'll recall, one of our budget challenges is what is our enrollment going to be? Because in March of 2020, everyone quit coming to school, and then the next year enrollment, not just for College Station, but statewide, was down. So I think you're going to see some data that says I think we've recovered from that and we're back on track. But now it's student attendance is playing havoc with us and trying to determine at when will our attendance rates be back to normal, because that affects instruction, of course, but it affects our budget. So we're going to talk a little bit about a hold harmless provision. Last year we had a hold harmless provision that had to do with the entire year and the hold harmless, but this year it has to do with attendance rates, particularly for period 1 of this year. So we'll go over that. We've had some extraordinary items. The extraordinary items is the term we use in finance. It's not operating expenses or revenue, but that's related to the hailstorm, and we also had Storm Uri. So some things that occurred last year that we're still dealing with insurance proceeds and related expenditures that's going to take a hit onto our fund balance. And then lastly, fund balance and trying to maintain that. So for 22-23, looking forward, student attendance again, as we're going to go over that and you're going to see why. Competitive salaries and staff retention is a challenge for us. And lastly, fund balance is still on the list. So a little historical data to put it all in perspective. So this charts our enrollment, and the years at the bottom are the end of our physical year, just to be clear. So 2022, that's actually the current year that we're in. So this is based on snapshot date, because I want to be consistent when we look at historical data that we're looking at enrollment at the same point in time for perspective. And the red line is average daily attendance, and of course that's at the end of the year. But something to really footnote is that, and this is to me, it's very positive information. That's where I said our enrollment, we've recovered. So you had 14,183 at the end of October. So the data and projections you're going to see is based on our enrollment middle of February, which was reported to me as 14,298. So that's not a very long period of time and we gained children. But yesterday that enrollment was 14,322. So we are continuing to increase enrollment, and that's helping out our bottom line. So that's 139 since snapshot date. And these kids are not at the junior and senior level, so they're going to stay with us, would be my estimate. 86 of those is at elementary and 27 at intermediate school. So that's helping us recover in some ways when you look at the data. So now the effect of the pandemic. This is where I talk to you about those attendance rates. So the blue bars, again, is our enrollment. So that's the same as the slide before. And the yellow line is our average daily attendance. Of course, I don't know where that's going to be at year end. But the red line is our attendance rate. So you can see that that red line plummets. Last year, that was affected by the pandemic. And this year, that's only through period 4. So you can see and we get funded based on average daily attendance. So that's what's causing us that budget challenge I talked to you about. So we're hoping with that first 6 weeks over and the last variant past us that that red line, when I show you next time, I'm hoping is higher up on that bar. Property tax rates, very interesting. So you can see from 2015 and 16, when our total tax rate, debt service, and maintenance and operations was just over $1.36. For this last year, you as trustees approved a total of $1.21.50. So that's a decline in the past 6 years of almost 15 cents. Some of that, if you'll look, is tax compression, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So as our property values grow, our property tax rate is forced down. And that got implemented, you can see in 2019-20 with the introduction of House Bill 3, that was 7 cents. But you can also see the debt rate declined that year as well. And then we've pretty much held our debt rate constant since then. And our M&O has continued to decline because of that compression. But almost 15 cents since 15-16. And then our property value growth, that's another piece of our budget that we have to monitor. So it's fluctuated from at the beginning of almost 7% to last year was 4.1. There are many places across the state that they did not reach that 4% because of the pandemic and all. But we've had some very healthy growth through some hard times. So that is a positive as well in this budget. A little later, we'll talk about it, but we feel like 4% growth is pretty conservative at this point. When it gets to a certain level, because of that tax compression, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference because we'll be forced down as well. But we're going to use 4% at this point in the budget process. We talked to you a while ago about fund balance as well. So this charts fund balance since 2015-16. You can see this is total fund balance. There's a lot of different categories. I'm sorry for that green. It didn't really look that way on my computer. But it was $32.9 million in 16. We increased it through 2019, and then since then we've been using fund balance slightly the last couple of years. And I've estimated the current year that we're in. I've factored in a $2.5 million loss at this point, which I'm hoping it's not quite that, but that's what I've factored in for this particular graph. So we want to keep in mind that financially, our fund balance they look at for our financial ratings for bond sales, but also our long-term stability. So in our financial integrity rating system, they're going to award points based on fund balance. They're going to be looking at two things. The first one is, do we have 75 days of expenditures in what they call the undesignated fund balance? Now, this is total, but at times, we do move those things around, so we're going to look at it in total. So that's actually, that's around $26.5 million when we calculated it, and that's based on, I calculated that based on my projected expenses for this year, which is what they will look at. But the other thing they look at is, or they want to see if you don't meet that criteria, they'll look at, has our fund balance reduction over the past 3 years been less than 25%? So those are the two things. And that calculated based on the total is around $9 million. So based on the 25% for sure, we will be good. We may have to look at undesignating some funds if we want to get to that 75, but it's the funds are there, so that's a good thing. So now moving on to some numbers. So this is the hold harmless provision I told you about, which a hold harmless is where they're going to set it at a level that we will not be below at when they're calculating our revenue. So TEA came up with what they're calling the target percentage attendance rate. And they, TPAR is how they've abbreviated it. They did this because statewide, that low attendance rate in the first 6-week period. So what they said, I don't know why it wasn't coming in pieces, but there it is. So what they said is they're going to look at the first 6 weeks, your attendance rate or the district's attendance rate, and they're going to, if it's low, they're going to look at, they're going to take the lesser of our attendance rate the first 6-week period of 1920. Believe it or not, that's the last first 6 weeks that we've had something normal. So they look at 1920, first 6 weeks, or the average attendance rate for the last 3 6 weeks this year. So we're not there yet. We don't know what that is. So they're going to take the lesser of those two. Now, I will tell you that there's been a lot of discussion because they set this back in October, these two criteria. I know it's confusing. So we have to calculate two numbers, compare it to where we are, where we are at. And I've got a chart that'll help show the diagram. So there's been a lot of discussion about, are they going to change this? Because, our fourth 6 weeks attendance rate was probably lower than our first 6 weeks. And a lot of them were like that. So we don't know what they're going to do, but there is discussion at the state level that this was not what was intended when they put this out. So we're still waiting. So this is where, okay, so what does that mean? So I've gone in and I've skipped a year because of COVID, but 18-19 was the last time that we had a normal year all year long. So I could see what is the trend of attendance rates. So based on that, you can see that period 1 in that year was 97.6. And then 4, 5, and 6 were all lower than that. So then we go look at 19-20. And 97.5 is one of those factors in that target attendance rate that we talked about. So I highlighted that one. And of course, we didn't have attendance at the end of the year. But looking at period 4, 95.7, trending very similar to 18-19. So if I assume that's going to continue, we had 92.1% in period 1. So we already know 97.5 is better. So now I've got to take the lesser of. So in period 4, our attendance rate was 91.7. It appears we're past that. So I'm just going to estimate 95% for the next 2 periods. So that's what this graph tries to depict. So the red line is 19-20. The blue line is 18-19. And then the gray line is this current year with 5 and 6 estimated at 95%. So what the red dot says is I'm pretty certain 4, 5, and 6 are going to be lower than my 97.1. So that target attendance rate under the current rules, I think is going to be somewhere in that red dot. Okay.
Y'all got it? It's gonna be a test over this when she's done.
I was subitizing the whole time.
I guess I'm confused. Why are they making it the lesser? They're not being very generous.
No, they're not being,
yes.
well, we would benefit. Now, if that period 4 hadn't gone down as much as it did, that red dot would have been in the 95% area. And so that's what that question mark is. So I told you they're looking at some things. So this is my guess. Nothing to say what they will do, but what if they said, okay, we're going to just use the average of period 5 and 6. It would be 95% instead of 93.5. Okay, so that's just something I threw in there about what if, so that you could see the impact of that. So next slide, I'm going to show you why this is important. Okay. I've looked at 3 different revenue scenarios for this year. So we budgeted at $13,160 and our average daily attendance, that would be our average daily attendance, I'm sorry. So if we were relying on our own attendance all year long, I feel like it's going to come in somewhere around 12,971. Now, we made our mark on enrollment. It's all attendance that's causing us to miss it. So I've estimated out the state revenue and recapture under that scenario. Then I look at, okay, so scenario B is under the current rules of that target attendance rate. So that would bring it up to 12,991. You're right, it didn't help us much. But look, if they threw that one period out, and I'm still keeping 91 for period 4, but I'm using the average, goes up to over 13,000, almost 13,100, but look at the difference in revenue from scenario A to C, almost $700,000. So that's why this is important, and we'll be monitoring it as we go along. I wanted to point out a little bit because you see some drastic differences, and I apologize that recapture on the first one should have been shown as a negative, but it is subtracted out there. So we adopted a budget with only a $25,000 recapture, and even in The scenario A, it's over 3 million, and the last one, 2.5. So some may wonder, how do we miss it by that much? Two things. One is it's based on your value and your average daily attendance, and it's not where we needed it to be, or we're not where we expected it to be. But the other thing is they changed the funding formula, the per capita rate, which is, they changed it, increased it, which should be a good thing, right about the time we were adopting our budget. We already had our ads published and everything set. But because we're in recapture, that effect increased our state revenue, but increased recapture to the tune of really no additional net benefit. So everything was already set in motion to adopt, so we adopted it based on that, but the net bottom line wouldn't have changed. So that's why that's so different. I told you, it wasn't going to be near as interesting as the last presentation. So then looking at our general fund estimates, again, I used all three. Actual, if we were on our own, the current hold harmless provision that's there, and then my scenario, which maybe they'll pick, maybe they're listening to me, I don't know. But there is some good news here, because we adopted a budget with a $2.9 million deficit where appropriations exceeded revenues. And in all three of these, it indicates we feel like we're going to do better. Now, do I wish it was improved more? Yes. But we've gone through still another strange year, attendance rates down. But I still feel like we're going to be able to come within that bottom line budget under any of these scenarios. So that's a positive takeaway. Now, one thing that I have not included here is those extraordinary items with the insurance claims and roofs. I did not put those in there. This is just operating.
Scenario C is absolutely a possibility, because they have to address the hold harmless, and they can't utilize, they can, but if they utilize the fourth grading cycle, where everyone was still dealing with the latest variant, then it will not only hurt us, but it will hurt every school district in the state. That's a correct statement, right, Ms. Strauss? Okay. So the two, and even a few dollars better, is very much a possibility.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They do. And they have discussed in every webinar I've been in about, we're still holding off on this target percentage attendance. So it's being discussed on a very regular basis. They just have not given us a response.
So they know budgets talks have started more than likely.
Yes.
Would they drag this out to June? To
They
wait to
could.
see how 5 and 6
They may
finish?
look at 5
Probably.
and 6. They receive the data. My thing is they may wait till the end of this fifth 6 weeks so that they can see how districts have recovered from that when they get some more data.
So to your point, Mr. Horak, yes,
But they
we
could
could be attempting to project next year's budget, not really knowing where this year's budget landed.
Yeah.
And I don't, not that I'm the conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I suspect it won't be handled till this summer, because then they can look at everybody's attendance, do the appropriate calculations to determine where they need that number to fall relative to the state budget. Sure, that's not going to happen, but
We hope not. But it's a very real possibility.
Do you see any indication that we were out of the norm for the rest of the state as far as that reporting period?
No, in fact, I think we're probably better than the norm.
Mr. Deck, I think it's been difficult on everyone, but I believe that we, the entirety of our community and our students and our faculty and staff fared better than a majority.
I think many of them are still struggling with the effect of just overall enrollment. And our enrollment says I think we have recovered and moving back in that positive trend that we had for enrollment growth.
We'll get an update, a spring update from our demographer probably in April sometime, so it'll be very interesting to see exactly what they do. And I will see a presentation from Bob Templeton, our demographer, actually tomorrow. He's going to share some numbers relative to the state as a whole. So it'll be interesting to see what that trend looks like through the course of the spring relative to what we're seeing with our enrollment.
I'm sure you've addressed this before. I can't remember. We had a little over $400,000 in lost federal funding. What was that due? If you go back one. From budgeted to the scenarios, go from 3.8 to 3.4.
Some of that is SHARS. Our federal revenues through that program is not where it was last year. That could settle out in what we call a cost report, but that won't hit until next year. There's some timing differences with regard to that.
Tell me what SHARS.
That is the Medicaid billing program through our special ed
It's a
department.
reimbursement for services provided.
Just moves forward.
It
Yeah.
could, we're going to have to wait to see what that cost report looks
Okay.
like.
Just curious. Thank you.
So those reports are a year behind. So looking ahead now to 22-23, we're finally behind the last year's data. This is the enrollment projections that were shared with you in the fall, where our demographer is estimating a 2.7% enrollment growth. Now you'll see that he based that off of 14,209. We're already above that. So again, we'll get some updated numbers in the next month or so, and we'll bring that forward to you. But 2.7% growth is what he's estimating. So looking at those enrollment projections, the question could be, I normally project that enrollment growth from snapshot date. But in this case, we've increased enrollment so much from snapshot date, maybe we shouldn't use that one. Maybe we should use current. So you're going to see revenue projections based on two scenarios. I like to show you more than one at least because we don't know where we're going to land. But scenario A adds 2.7% based on our snapshot enrollment of 14,183. And then scenario B will look at 2.7% based on our enrollment that was in mid-February, because that's when I was starting work on that data, and we've even increased since then. So you're going to see some pretty sizable differences just based on those two numbers. And again, our average daily attendance and our weighted average daily attendance are really what we're funded on. So those are the two scenarios that I'm going to run some numbers on and show you. Or I did run some numbers. The next thing we have to look at is our property value growth. I mentioned we're going to use 4%, but I wanted to give you a sneak peek at what the tax rate might look like with a 4% growth. So we talked about that maximum compressed tax rate. There's really two steps to that. So the state comes out with information of the compressed rate based on statewide property value growth, and they've already provided us estimates with that. And then based on that, there's only a certain percentage we can be over that. So that makes additional compression, what they call local compression, for any school district that this coming year exceeds 4.36%. The taxpayers will have additional tax rate compression. So that's why I've shown you 2.5%, because that was one of the criteria we had last year that says that at 2.5%, our maintenance and operations rate would decrease from 95.2 cents to 94.41. At the 4% rate, that doesn't change. So we're getting some benefit there using 4%. But I said at 4.36%, it starts to compress even more. I use 7 because at a 5%, it's compressing such a small amount. It's in fractions of cents. So I went to 7, but then you can see if we should have 7%, that compressed rate is going to be just under 93 cents. So you can see it keeps going down. So property values grow above that 4%, pretty much the tax rate's going to decline.
Everybody got that? So 2.5%, which we're probably absolutely, well, we'll recognize, then that's 0.8 cents compression on M&O.
Right.
And if it runs up to 7, I don't know, maybe, that's an additional cent and a half,
Yeah, it's another cent
1.6.
and a half.
So if we recognize all that compression, the M&O tax rate would go from 95 cents, really in essence, to 92, 93, correct?
Right, about 93 cents, if we went to 7.
What does 1 penny on the M&O generate for us?
An additional penny, because it has both property taxes and what we call enrichment, where the state contributes 1.5 to 1.6 million
Okay.
on that first penny, and it changes after that. So for all of the estimates that you're seeing here, we have factored in that additional homestead exemption. Hasn't passed yet, but I'm pretty certain I could take a bet that it will. So that homestead exemption would increase from 25,000 to 40,000. But that has been factored into these projections. So now looking at revenue, based on that 4% growth and the two scenarios, I just kind of go back to the bottom line. You will see some additional federal program revenue declines. Some of that we'll talk about in a little bit. It's federal, it's the SHARS program I mentioned, but also the ESSER indirect cost. But you can see how the recapture comes into play on that line of, we had 25,000 last year and 864 under scenario A and 250,000 under B, because same value, but more students. So you can see that recapture goes down. But under scenario A, compared to our current year revenues, would bring us an additional estimated 2 million and almost 2.7 under B. And again, that additional homestead exemption has been factored in here. So that's a
That's using the
positive.
2.7, correct? On the,
Yes, it's
Yes,
using 2.7.
2.7% student growth.
And
It's just a matter from what base.
even if you use PEMS and you're not building, so you're using 2.7 off of the March enrollment on this.
Scenario A is based on snapshot. Scenario B is the February enrollment.
Okay. So it's going to be even if you backed it off to snapshot, then your percentage, and then you recognize that 100, then that 2.7 is going to be 3 anyway. So it's
It
going
probably,
to. Okay.
it probably will. It's just a matter, I want to get the demographer's update first and see where that's leading before I make adjustments at this point. But if you'll recall, a $2.9 million deficit before, and this would generate under scenario B, which I think is fully attainable at this point, a 2.7. So comparing that to our current year appropriations, I haven't added anything yet at this point. Scenario A, with recapture and current year expenditures, has expenditures exceeding revenue of 875,000 and just shy of 213,000 negative under scenario B. And
That's
then-
recognizing the full deficit of 2.9.
Yes, comparing to the prior year budget, or the current year budget that we're in right now of 2.9.
But it's possible we'll come in closer to 2.
Right, but that's using last year's appropriation, so
Right.
I don't know that we could budget much less than that. So below the black line looks at the general fund, the ESSER that we're using to assist the general fund. So this current year, we used 1.4 million for indirect cost. That is just revenue that we can shift based on a percentage of expenditures over to the general fund to help support. And $1.6 million in expenditures that we reclassified over, so 3 million. So for next year, I've looked at retaining the expenditure side, but because this is based, the indirect cost is based on a percentage of expenditures. Of course, we're spending more in this current year, lowering that from 1.4 million to 700,000. So this projection has us reducing our dependency on ESSER by $700,000. not looking at increasing the expenditure side, but holding it the same and reducing the indirect cost. Promise, we're almost to the end. So I said this was based on current year expenditures. We haven't added anything yet, so we always know that there's some adds there. So these are some of the priorities that we've talked about that we need to consider. A compensation plan, of course, and as a reminder, 1% last year was estimated to cost just over $1 million to the general fund when we talk about what percentage we're going to look at. So 1% is a little over $1 million. With that enrollment growth, we need to look at staffing. Particularly at the elementary school, because that's where we've got some thresholds to meet. But you can also, if you remember, that's where most of our growth has occurred since Snapshot. So we're looking at staffing levels there and where we project them. So our career and technical education program generates revenue. They have some weighted funding there, but we're also required to spend a certain amount on that program directly. It's had some increases for the past couple years, and we think it's even more. So I feel like we're going to have to add expenditures to meet that threshold, that required spend threshold. And like I said, it's also to support the program with the number of students that are there. So we're looking into that. And then there's several areas that are really outside of the district's control. We're looking at special education and adequately staffing those needs there. Fuel cost, we're all feeling the pain right now, and that may even affect our current year. Our property and casualty insurance, which we'll be getting quotes on for the summer months. Our SRD program, we certainly have a contract with them, but in that is, of course, where we fund raises, and that doesn't coincide with what we adopt. So we haven't been told what that is. And our Brazos Central Appraisal District, where the percentage that we fund of that budget is based on our property values to the other entities. So those are some things that we'll need to factor in that some of them we have control over and some of them we don't. And just a reminder of our timeline, we're just in the start with the budget workshop. That arrow needs to move down one below that, but just kind of tells you how we'll progress all the way through August at the time we'll have the public hearing and ask you to adopt the budget. And with that, I'll entertain any additional questions or discussion.
I will say I got excited for a Velmet when you showed a number that had us within 200,000 of a balanced budget, but then you had the next slide.
Yeah, and we have to consider the rest of the stuff.
It would be nice sometime to not have to, we've had multiple years of having to use our fund balance and can't do it forever.
Right.
So we'll keep
I
talking about it.
understand that.
I did have one other kind of side question, just when the tax compression, and I don't think this would ever happen to us, but if they did compress your tax rate, what if you came back later and you had like negative growth or something? Would they?
You know, I don't remember.
Would they let you go back? Yeah, I would have, or would it automatically happen?
The state level, the state level compression is set. So I don't know if it reverses.
Yeah.
That's a great question. And
I don't think it'll happen to us.
I hope it doesn't happen to us.
Yes.
Lots of conversation to be had, and I think in the upcoming months, you know, as we get a feel for thing, one may be to keep a good eye on that compression, to see if that's something that we discuss down the road. You know, how much do we allow or consider on the compression from a local standpoint? Just food for thought, long ways down the road. Because there's a way to allow some compression there, and then have a conversation about at what point do we try to generate some additional revenue. But we have time. Any other questions for Ms. Strauss?
I think you'll be hearing from me regularly from here on out.
They seem excited.
I know.
I'm glad you're our CFO right now.
Yeah, me too.
Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss.
Sure.
That brings us to item 4, consideration and discussion related to the District of Innovation Plan for 2022 through 2027. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak. We have Dr. Trammell, our Chief Academic Officer, here to visit with us about our DOI plan that we're considering. We'll be asking for approval or action on this item at the regular board meeting. And I know Penny will go through all this. DEIC's been working on this probably since September. And it's been up for public feedback. And I know she kind of gave the group a briefing at November workshop, I believe.
Correct.
And again, I know Penny will touch on all that, but just background and presentation on this, because again, it'll be an action item that we'll be looking at the regular meeting at 7. So Penny?
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Horak and board. Tonight, I'm going to share with you the new District of Innovation Plan that we will be bringing to the board for potential approval at the regular board meeting. Just a quick reminder, we have the opportunity to be a District of Innovation as a result of the 84th legislative session, and in particular, House Bill 1842, which gives local school districts the same flexibilities as private schools and charter schools. The board appointed the District Education Improvement Council as the District of Innovation Advisory Committee for our district when they adopted the resolution to become a District of Innovation. So our current plan expires in November of 2022. We have a couple of codes that one we revised and one we added that we wanted to go ahead and get our plan approved for spring hiring. So we'll look at those in just a moment. The term of any District of Innovation plan is 5 years unless the plan is amended or abolished. And if you amend it in any way, you have to start over and go through the entire process again with the committee appointed by the board. We do have 9 Texas education codes in our new District of Innovation plan. And if the board adopts this plan at the regular board meeting, this particular plan, unless amended or abolished, would expire March the 8th of 2027. So with that, just a quick look at the timeline. As Mr. Martindale indicated, the DEIC did start working back in September on this District of Innovation plan in discussion with our current plan and just hiring and our applicant pool and availability of individuals for staffing. We felt like we wanted to look at this plan for an earlier renewal. In October, the DEIC looked at the District of Innovation Texas education codes and chapters to consider. We came back to the DEIC with a draft plan in November. We did give a report to the board on November 16th at the workshop on that draft plan. The process requires that we post the plan online for at least 30 days for public viewing and potential input at a public meeting. And we did submit at that time in November a draft of our plan to our legal counsel for review, because we always want to be sure we have policy aligned with whatever we are seeking to do, and certainly value their input on what we are proposing to do. Then in December, Mr. Martindale did notify the commissioner of our intent to adopt exceptions in a new plan. And in January, we held a public meeting to consider the final version of the District of Innovation Plan based on feedback from council and any citizens who may have wanted to give input in that public meeting. In February, the District Education Improvement Council considered input and voted on the plan. And we considered any policy changes or updates that would be needed as a result of that. Tonight, we come to you with a draft plan at the workshop, hopefully an adopted plan at the regular board meeting, and then immediately upon approval of the plan, this will become our new plan, effective immediately, and Mr. Martindale will notify the commissioner tomorrow, hopefully. So in looking at the plan, we have 9 codes in the new plan. You'll notice that there'll be some highlighting at the top of some of the plans, and that's because I wanted it to be clear what had been revised or what is new to our plan that we have added for you. If you don't see anything highlighted at the top of the slide, then that means this is just a carryover of some of the exceptions we've had in our plan since 2017. So the first code that we are looking at is 21.003, and this centers around hiring and locally certifying different educators or individuals to teach our students. We revised the language on this in the old plan, or in the plan that is currently in place. It speaks more to the CTE area, and that is a hard to fill area, and we do still want flexibilities with that, but we wanted it to be worded a little more broadly to encompass things like LOT. So if we have trouble finding a French teacher, but we have someone with a master's in French, we could consider, based on assessment and the superintendent's approval, letting them work with our students. So the language has just been modified to encompass a broader scope of individuals to consider in various areas. This is a new Texas code that we have added. It's 21.102B, and it centers around teacher employment contracts, specifically probationary contracts. So if we hire a teacher that has been teaching 5 of the last 8 years, they enter our district on a probationary contract. At the end of that first year, we have to make a decision. Do we put them on a term contract, or are they not fitting in with our district and maybe they need to, have more training on something or whatever? And because we would have to make a decision right then at the end of that very first year, we would like flexibility to work with good teachers who we feel like are going to fit into our district, but maybe just need a little more training or a little more acclimation and support as they work with our kids. So this just gives us that flexibility. The following are things that were in our previous plan, but I'll just review them quickly for the sake of transparency that we are continuing to include them. In Chapter 21.404, this deals with teacher planning and preparation time. And the code says that teachers are entitled to 450 minutes of planning time within each 2-week period. And this particular exception would allow for campuses, if they decided they wanted to do something with their professional learning communities, and they went through their site-based team and put in their campus improvement plan, they wanted to do something different, this just allows them to do so. Again, same flexibilities as charter and private schools. This one is very familiar, I'm sure, to you all. It is the first day of instruction, and then the other code is the last day of instruction. And the law says that we can't begin instruction prior to the 4th Monday of August, and we can't dismiss students for the school year prior to May 15th. We do use this, have used it frequently, almost yearly, with our calendar development in starting earlier than the 4th Monday. And so we would like to continue to have this as a part of our plan. The next 3 slides deal with student-teacher ratios. Specifically, Texas Code 25.111 says that we have to have a sufficient number of certified teachers to maintain an average ratio of not less than 1 teacher for every 20 students in average daily attendance. And so this just allows us to determine that based on the structure of the class, the content being taught, the age of the children being taught, and that kind of thing. This goes right along with that, with pre-K through 4th grade, that 22-to-1 teacher-student ratio. And in particular, again, it allows us to consider the age of the students, the content being taught. We're structured in different ways at our elementaries. And then it also gives us just local control, because previously, anytime a class in our district went over 22-1, we would have to write a waiver for an exception to the commissioner and then get that waiver approved. I mean, it's just, this is just more efficient to allow us local control. This one goes right along with that with notice of class size. Again, this gives us local control on that. And, should we be trying any innovative structures at the elementary level, then this allows campuses to do that and allows us to determine when that notification occurs. This last code is new, and it is the designation of the campus behavior coordinator. And the code says that each campus would have one campus behavior coordinator. We like to practice distributed leadership, and we like having more than one person on campus with this designation. It's very helpful if people are out and you need a campus behavior coordinator. So this just allows us the flexibility of having more than one of these coordinators at each of our campuses, should we need to. So, and with that, that's it. Our plan is pretty simple. We've got the two new codes, one with contracts and one with the campus behavior coordinator, and then we've tweaked the language a little bit on the one for locally certifying and hiring individuals. So with that, questions, comments?
Real quickly, do any of these get denied? I mean, I'm assuming ours would not, but.
This is our second one to write. And I haven't heard of anything getting denied. I think where the tricky part comes in is if you don't get the legal counsel to review it and you try to do something thinking that you're okay because you've stuck it in a plan, and you're not using the exception in the way it was intended, which is why we let council review this. There is a list of codes that you can choose, but you can be exempted from some of them according to our council, but it really doesn't give you much flexibility. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Trammell.
All right, that brings us to item 5, consideration and discussion regarding the work of the Academic Achievement and Class Rank Committee relating to board policy EIC local. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Ms. Horak and board members. Here with our monthly update on the work of our EIC local ad hoc committee is our Executive Director of Secondary Education, Ms. Tiffany Parkerson.
Good evening. I think that we are approaching the end of the monthly updates as we go through here, and I can share a little bit of more information on the progress of the committee this evening. So thank you for this opportunity to update you all. Once again, our purpose for this committee was to examine policy EIC local and then determine whether any changes would be recommended to you all, the Board of Trustees. And at this point, the committee has expressed a desire to recommend some changes to you all. Once again, the changes would be implemented for one incoming freshman class, and we've reached consensus on that, which is included later on in this presentation. And then we'd like to emphasize that no current high school students would be impacted if any changes are brought forward. So once again, we started in the middle and went out of order in our approach, but really structured our decision-making around the order in which the dominoes fall within that structure. So we'll review tonight the order that they are based on how we tackled them, not how they are within the actual written policy. Okay. So since we last met at the last board workshop, we have conferred with technology just about the many options that the committee was considering to start beginning those conversations about the capabilities of Power School and what it can do and so forth. We also convened an internal team to capture those concepts and draft wording based on the committee's feedback thus far. That internal team had representation from both comprehensive high school counseling offices as well as from central office administration. And then we took our notes and conferred with our TASB policy consultant. And she took those notes and created our first rough draft, if you will, of a complete policy based on the progress that we have made so far. And our committee looked at this yesterday together and was able to provide feedback as well. In addition, we created some sample scenarios based on the draft inclusions and exclusions for the calculation of GPA. Thank you. I need to give a shout out to Tammy Dudo because really it's not a we, it's a she. She did a lot of work behind the scenes in creating some scenarios for us to be able to get some insight as to how these potential changes in our policy would impact the way class rank is structured for our school district. So just a couple of quick reminders. The purpose of this policy itself is to look at academic achievement and class rank. This has implications beyond that, but the policy itself is really about these two things here. How we demonstrate the level of rigor or difficulty of courses, and we do that through the weighted and unweighted, the tiers, that aspect of the policy. But most importantly, really the purpose of this policy is to contextualize individual student performance, one against one another in a graduating class, so that we are then able to use it for the college admissions processes, scholarships, and locally to determine our academic honors for graduation. So I'll just review the things that we have shared previously quickly. For Decision 1, we have landed at a 3-tiered system rather than our current 2-tiered system. This would differentiate between the level of rigor and advanced placement courses and advanced in academic dual credit classes as well. Then all other courses would be included as Tier 3 courses. As far as how this manifests in a grade calculation from a numerical average into a weighted GPA, we wanted to make sure, once again, that our weighted 4.0 or unweighted 4.0 equal to 90 because there are many applications where that benefits our kids. We wanted to extend those weights the whole way down to 70. So if you're earning credit, you are earning the weight that goes along with the course. And then there's a desire from the committee to include both weighted and unweighted GPAs on transcripts. And so that led us to coming to consensus on this draft conversion chart related to those 3 tiers. At our last workshop, we had some preliminary consensus. Now we're working toward what I would call general consensus with a need to review in April at our next meeting, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So we have reached consensus on the cohort of students for which we would like to recommend any changes be implemented, and that is our current group of 7th graders, the class of 2027. Some of these students have started taking high school classes, but the way the policy is written, that it's about the cohort and when they graduate together, not necessarily about when they started taking those classes. So I think that's important, and that is just a handful of kiddos. Really, 8th grade is where we have more students who start down that road, and there are different implications of how the policy would play out. But all that to say, we feel like administratively we could also make the necessary changes before these students end up in high school as well, based on the recommendations. Okay. Additionally, the committee had a strong desire to make sure we have that unweighted, holistic view of student performance captured in our transcripts. After we consulted with our TASB policy consultant, she shared that we can just do that. Okay, that is not necessarily something that has to be in the academic achievement and class rank policy. So we would be able to move forward without including that within the policy, but I wanted to underline and keep that at the forefront that is a desire of the committee. Oops. Sometimes I get too happy with the clicker here. I'm going too far. Okay, there we go. And I'll use the arrows henceforth. So with the weighted GPA side, once again, that's to use for class rank as defined in local policy, and this policy gives the backbone within which we operate whenever we are ranking our student and designating those graduation honors. Okay. So from our committee meeting yesterday, hot off the presses here, for the class rank GPA, the calculation based on the committee's recommendation would include eligible courses regardless of when taken, whether they are taken in middle school or high school, as long as they're a high school credit, and would include up to 8 semesters of our core courses, English, mathematics, science, and social studies, and include up to 2 semesters of languages other than English. And eligible substitutions for any of those courses will also be included in the policy. Just on the administrative side, there are some parameters that we can set within eligible substitution and what is a logical substitution in some of those places. So as far as the rationale behind this, I'll give you a little bit more information here in a moment. But first, I'd like to continue to share what this means as far as practical application as well. So in the following categories, we would include the classes for those for core and LOTE that no matter where the kid takes the class, if it is a summer school course, we already include those in our current GPA and class rank system. We would extend that to include credit by exam, which is something that is not currently included in our GPA. We would also include correspondence course and distance learning courses, which primarily would be something that we would do through the Texas Virtual School Network and reciprocate. There are very few exceptions there. But I'm going to go back and you know what, I missed a key word here that I would like to call out. It would be the highest 8 semesters and the highest 2 semesters of languages other than English. So when you think about that from a student's perspective, some students do have a lot more than 4 courses of the core. They are required to actually have 4 semesters at a minimum of languages other than English as well. And so that emphasis on the highest gives us the opportunity to take the best from kids and use that to compare them one against the other. Hence the reason behind adding some of those categories that had previously been excluded into the inclusions list.
So when you say highest, are you saying the highest grades that they got? Or are you saying the most advanced classes that they took?
It's both because they go hand in hand, right?
Okay.
So it would be their highest grade, and then it's converted based on the 3 tiers of weight. And so,
Okay.
So certainly for most kids, their AP and advanced classes would be what end up here.
Right.
There might be an outlier where a student makes a 100 in an on-level class, and that ends up being their highest for them.
And then that would count?
And then that would count, yes.
Okay.
it's by
It's
semester.
the 8 semesters that in essence generate the highest grade, it yields the highest grade point.
Okay.
So whether that's a tier 3, a tier 2, or a tier 1, the ones that yield the highest grade point is what would be utilized. Does that make sense,
Yes.
Sherilyn? Okay.
Thank you.
And what Tiffany is saying, tier 3, they're allowing these classes to be counted because it doesn't yield the highest grade point. So likely, if a kid's truly concerned about their grade point, they're taking tier 1 and tier 2 classes anyway. So it would be unlikely that taking a grade off of a tier 3 course would influence their grade point. It could, but not likely from an honor grad standpoint and upper level, the higher grade points. Did I just muddy the water more? I
I
apologize,
think you
Ms.
said it
Parkinson,
far better than I
stopped.
was articulating, so thank you for the assist.
You're welcome. Every now and then.
So I'd also like to share the rationale for coming to limiting the number of courses that are included in a ranked GPA. So with our committee, we had some consensus guiding principles that I had shared previously, and 2 of those are listed here or referenced here. First, the elective courses provide students those opportunities for learners to explore and grow, and they're absolutely incredibly important. We also know that this concept of not including all courses does promote academic risk-taking by taking the pressure off. Let's say I'm a student who already has 8 great semesters of science, and I'm looking at Physics C, and I'm not sure I can do that. I can take the academic risk of taking that upper level science course and know that I have these other courses that I'm relying on that I've already taken as well. Additionally, our current system, we know that we have students who are so concerned with class rank and GPA that they are not taking electives based on interests, or rather they are choosing electives based on weight rather than their interest. And we see that played out in scenario after scenario, and especially in light of just going through the registration process with the 8th grade. The counselors could tell you much more about how that plays out with our students. And so the converse of that would be implied or inferred here that then we would allow students to select those elective courses based truly on what they desire to learn more about, and to embrace their unique desires and career paths and so forth through that. And we also know that this is most beneficial through the college admissions process. We learned through our college admissions counselor who visited that after the top 10%, students are viewed holistically. And we need students who are taking lots of different things, not just their academic prowess. And so when we look at some of our students who come to that next 10% who have made the conscious choice not to take the electives that they're interested in, that can work against them if in that holistic view. Additionally, comparison districts who utilize this method or a very similar method have shared positive outcomes in their elective areas in increasing enrollment based on making this similar change in limiting the number of semesters included in going for core and loads. Additionally, as you may be wondering, why wouldn't we go to the other end and maybe designate a certain number of electives and so forth? And there was a lot of conversation in the committee and a lot of feedback, and really, we really struggled with that, primarily because the levels of rigor are so widely varied across the different elective areas. You think about from fine arts to athletics to career and technical education to our AVID program and so forth. The levels of rigor are different, and our current course offerings are an attempt to capture that and to give equitable weighting where it's due, but we still have a lot of pockets where it's widely varied, and not including the elective courses in a rank or weighted GPA here would allow us that opportunity to clean up some of those inflated grades, if you will, or weighted courses that may not need to be weighted and so forth, because a student is taking them based on interest rather than weight. And I think that the most important kind of underlying idea here is we have really tried to stay rooted in our strategic design and the framework and celebrating and embracing unique success. Academic achievement is one aspect of unique success, but it is not all. And so we are exploring administratively as well, different ways we can highlight the variety of strengths and successes of our students in other ways. So for example, at graduation, we honor our local academic honors. We're looking at how we could also include some other opportunity to celebrate success in those elective areas as well. So just wanted you to be aware of that too.
Can I just interject here and say
Yes.
thank you? Because that is the thing that I have struggled with the most with all of this. And I'm trying to trust you guys because you guys are doing all this work. But that is the one thing, not being on the committee, that I've been trying to figure out and struggle with, because, we talk about, celebrating unique success and how we commend those kids, and we realize that there are kids that are not strong in the 4 core subjects, right? And so I just wanted to make sure that we were not forgetting, losing, not celebrating that. So this makes me feel much better, much better. And I am. I'm coming around, and I like everything that you guys have looked into, and I do think that you have looked at every aspect. But thank you for talking about this and making sure that we don't lose that as well.
I appreciate that. And you remind me of a statement made at one of our meetings by a student at their table group who was struggling in the same way that you just expressed with this idea. And, we want to make sure we're valuing our electives and diverse interests and all of that. And then when that table leader asked, how do you select your electives? And her response without skipping a beat was based on the weight. And
That's
so-
the other thing. I mean, I've watched it play out. And so that's why you guys have not had an easy job. Because I see both sides. I see all sides.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd mentioned that Ms. Dudo did some extensive work with a sample scenario. We went back to a pre-pandemic class, to the class of 2019, and looked at a set of 460 graduates and sampled the top 50, which would equate to the top 10% plus a couple of extra, to see what changing to a four-core and LOTE high semester style system would do. We noticed immediately that the students who were in AP courses did move up compared to students in advanced courses, which, you know, we would have guessed beforehand, but it just reiterated that the tiering of the systems does move the kids in the most rigorous courses up compared to where they are, especially when they're side by side with a student who may have taken, for example, an English 3 Advanced and an English 3 AP. They might have been tied, but the tiers move one up. We also thought it was interesting as we looked at these students that students with weighted electives did often move down when they were removed, but the students with unweighted electives often moved up. And so it just shows that whether or not you happen to like or you chose weighted electives, what that is doing in our current system. And we also noticed that students with AP LOTE courses moved up in the system because they had more semesters to choose from, which I think the committee at yesterday's meeting really had a lot of discussion about 4 semesters versus 2 semesters. And this is why they landed at 2, because regardless of which language other than English pathway a student chooses, they can get to that AP level if that's what they desire. Okay. So with that sample scenario, it was very helpful in looking at our graduation honors section and really coloring that discussion. So I wanted to share a few key ahas from that. First, it was the desire of the committee. Right now in our current system, our summa cum laude, or highest level of graduates, are the highest number by far. So over the last 6 graduating classes, for example, they've been about 18% of each class recognized as summa as the highest level out of about 40% total recognition, about 38 to 40. And so moving to the 3-tiered system decreased our number of summas through that course by looking at this is the cut point that we have in our existing policy. It did that for us with the tiering of the systems. Magna was the smallest number previously. You look at, that's a really tight differential there, a couple of points there. But what we saw from looking at that sample is that more of the kids are going to be in this group. The highly competitive advanced kids are going to huddle here in the Magna range. And then cum laude is a designation that we realize that our students who are in all on-level courses and are doing incredibly well, they have a chance at being an honor graduate with the cum laude in the tiers as they're proposed here in this recommendation. So based on that information, the committee did determine that our current consensus would be to utilize the same cut points and apply them into the new system because it looks like it will reach the desired outcome. And celebrate lots of kids and uphold our high standard of academic excellence with that 85 as your numerical average threshold as well. All right. Okay, so that gets us into local graduation honors. Some things that were recommended by the TASB Policy Council that I wanted to share that will be in there when you see a draft. Our current policy does not include language about the highest ranking graduate in it. That is one of our legal requirements, and we do this in practice. We just don't have this included in our policy to designate our highest ranking graduate. I know I'm between y'all and dinner. I'm trying to hurry. There goes a stutter. And then the breaking the tie for the highest ranking graduates, we need to have some parameters in there as well should that scenario ever play out. And it's very clear, here is our policy on those 2 different things. So our next steps will be to take the feedback from the committee and work with our policy consultant on revising the wording from the committee. We'll present an updated draft recommendations for the policy language to the committee on April 4th and 5th. Just as spring has started, we've noticed that there are more conflicts with our committee members, and so I'm trying to create a lot of opportunity to get as many people there to see that that next draft.
I'm not on that committee.
From that. All right.
Let's go and check. If so, the next meeting's not in August.
Indeed. So we'll have to reconsider the cohort. Okay. So I also have tentatively reserved the boardroom for April 11th. Should we need to come back after that and come back together one more time before we are with you all again here at the April 19th meeting. We will have, based on the written consensus in the documents, which I'll continue to share during the transmittal, there are some clear delineated ideas and the nuances and the details, but we need to come back together as a committee to be able to talk through those things out loud. We ran out of time yesterday. Look at that draft, and then ideally, we will be bringing a draft recommendation, complete policy to you all at the April 19th workshop, to then potentially take action about at the May board meeting. I also wanted to just show the celebration. You can see where the committee started in our feeling about how our policy worked. We got a little scratchy at the January 24th meeting, and then at the end of last night, we're feeling pretty good about it again. And so I think that it's a celebration there. All right, what questions do you have? Yeah.
As a parent of a seventh grader, class of 2027, that makes me feel older. Question, thank you, Jeff. So you just said the parents of eighth grader or going into eighth grade are already considering the classes they're taking for GPA. And so we're going to hopefully present this would be approved by the board in May.
Yes.
Is the summer sufficient time for parents to consider how this impacts their child and maybe sit down with counselors and renegotiate what classes they've chosen?
So for our current seventh grade students who are looking at eighth grade, primarily our students who are enrolled in high school courses in the eighth grade are in CTE courses. And so in this framework, that would not impact their GPA, those CTE courses. There are a few students who do advance in math especially, but they've already chosen that program, and they have more than 8 semesters by the end of their high school career to choose the highest from. And so I think that it's still a reasonable time frame to implement with the current seventh graders, and then that gives us all of eighth grade to coach them up and explain the way their GPA will be set up as they head and make selections for high school. That makes sense. Okay.
I don't think there's anything there that the number of offerings at the eighth grade level relative to the high school, it's still pretty tight relative to what this draft policy would do. And I think if there is something that a parent had a question or asked to make an adjustment on, then we would work with them accordingly. I think that would be the right thing to do, considering the tentative timing we have on this.
I mean, I do think it's a good point, because there are, between some of the math and the language that you can take in the middle school, besides what we do in this room, are we going to, by that time, will that class be made aware of these upcoming changes?
Yes, ma'am. It's a balance, because certainly the reason why we keep doing the updates is we want to be very transparent in our process and our thought processes about this. But once we move forward and we know this is our class, we would start with our public relations off when it Chuck to help with making sure that the word is out there and that people understand. And then internally, certainly through our counseling, through our advisory classes and videos, whatever different layers of sending out the information and making sure people are informed, we will take those paths.
I have another question and kind of comment that I'm going to make, and obviously I say this every time, so much thanks to you, but to all the people who have been showing up to all these meetings. They go so quick, we cover so much stuff, that hour and a half, we just don't get to everything really. And I do want to comment, I feel like one thing we haven't really got to an in-depth discussion about, and I know it because it hasn't made it even up on here yet, is the question about valedictorian and salutatorian. And because, by the way, that's something that's usually, it is in this policy. And we've touched on it at our tables, but I feel like we haven't had the discussions with cross tables in the room and with the whole bigger group about whether or not we feel like that should be included or not. And by the way, if you don't know, right now, in our policy, we do not recognize a valedictorian and a salutatorian, and that is in the policy. And so I think there's kind of been this default of just keeping it that way, right? I personally very much feel like we should recognize a valedictorian and salutatorian. So I'm obviously wanting to have this discussion in that room to understand all sides of it. And I mean, my viewpoint is, we talked about before, we recognize all kinds of unique success in our students, and I want to recognize unique success, but I also feel like one piece of unique success is the kid who excels with their academics. And I don't have a good understanding or a good feeling why the decision was made apparently many moons ago to not, recognize that why we wouldn't at least consider doing it again. So I feel like I haven't gotten to that point on that question yet.
So I alluded earlier that there were some details and nuances within that we have not had a chance to talk about and that we will talk about at the April 4th and 5th meetings. But really, when you look at the table feedback as a whole, just based on the notes, there doesn't look like a representative desire to make a change in the Val-Sal area. But certainly that is something that we need to talk about in the open room and discuss the rationale behind, because once we get into that rationale piece, that's when we've been able to come to true consensus and feel good about what we're recommending. I would say too that another thing that came up at the end of the meeting yesterday, just that relates to local graduation honors, is some school districts have chosen not to publish exact class rank numbers, but will tell you you're in the top 10% or the top 20% and some things like that. And that came up from one of the groups. And so, and we didn't get to finish talking about it. So I think we'll begin our April 4th and 5th meetings on those the local graduation honors concepts that we need to talk about more thoroughly. And then we'll move on from there and looking at the draft wording. And we have time then to put any input from the committee into the draft again, revise and edit before our April 19th meeting with the board.
I appreciate that. I do feel like it's when our meetings, they fill up, and all of a sudden an hour and a half is gone. And even though I even know that some of the notes in there, I went to one table, they hadn't even had a chance to discuss it, right? Yeah. And they just said, we'll just keep it as it is because they hadn't had a chance to discuss it. So I hope that we can make time for that discussion. And I also think there's two pieces of the question that we need to answer. One is whether we recognize them or not, because I think a lot of people said they might want to recognize them. The other part of our current is who speaks at graduation, and maybe. And that's they vote on it, so maybe I think they're kind of two different questions, I guess.
Well, and there's the overlap here too in that between policy and administrative guidelines that are
Maybe
included in our course
catalog
catalog and whatnot too. So we can parse through that in those meetings, absolutely.
Thank you. Because every other thing we have had a chance to really have that back and forth and understand. And I've changed my mind on some things, and I think other people have too. It's really been a great working group. So thank you.
It's work long overdue, and the group has done a wonderful job. The time does fly because it's very deep conversation, and you truly try to analyze every different perspective. So the group's done a wonderful job through the course of the whole year with this. So thank you for your work, Ms. Parkerson.
Thank y'all.
All right. And that will bring us to adjournment. See y'all here in 8 minutes.